My name is Myrtle Polly Dubuisson Mincher. I'm a native of Long Beach, and I'm very proud of it. I was born on this house in 1908, and I'm very proud of it. I want to give a little bit of the history of Long Beach because I've been right here living with it. And so I wanted to tell you how the first settlers that moved into Long Beach came in 1781. And their name was Ladner, but it was D-E-Ladner. The Christian Emery. And they moved here in, part of the land was between Gulfport, West Gulfport, East Long Beach, and they moved here. And their youngest son, Nicholas, Marianne Pequet, and they settled on Kent Island. And on the island, they were raising beautiful pine trees, and they built a harbor and shipped lumber all over the world from that spot. They lived there for a long time, but then the weather would get bad, so they decided to move to the mainland. So they settled on a piece of property on the mainland, or 20 parcels of land. In 1799, Patrick died, and the Spanish government gave his widow his property and called it the Widow Ladner claim. And so all property deeds in this area have the Widow Ladner property deed on the deeds. Mine has it, I know. Then in 1842, John McCon, who was a civil engineer and surveyor, he moved to this area. He came down and visited, and he loved it so much he moved his family down here. And he built a home in East Long Beach near Gulfport College area, and he named it Rosalie. He was the first postmaster in Long Beach. John's son, Harper McCon, is the name that we know best because we have Harper McCon schools. He donated the property where the first Harper McCon School was, and they used it, and that place is where the school that I started to was in that area, and it's now the town green. But it was a very special area when I came through it. He also donated land for other businesses, and we have a lot of McCon survivors living here in Long Beach, and they are proud of their history. In 1884, the Quarles family moved in. W.J. Quarles plotted Jeff Davis Avenue, and they opened the first store. He followed the other as a postmaster too. And he set up the first schools in his home, and he was a teacher for the kids that came because people were coming in. And about that time, they decided that Long Beach should be incorporated to make a big, big difference. So in 1905, the city decided that they knew they needed 900 people to incorporate. So they had to set the limits. West Girard Street was the west side of town. The railroad was the north side, Cleveland Avenue the east side, and the Gulf the west side. And they needed 900 people, but they only had 895. So they had to figure out how to get some extra people. And my grandparents, Donna Shannon and Anastasia Dubuisson, lived in Pineville. They had 13 children. There was a house on the beach which would have been south of Gulfport College. And that house was built out over the water, but it was vacant. So The city officials taught my grandparents to move in there long enough to incorporate the city. So that means a whole lot more to me too, knowing that. Long Beach went by several names. In 1853, George Scott and his family moved to Georgia Avenue. They had a big sawmill. They named it Scott Station. When the family of McCons came in, they wanted to change the name, and they called it Rosalie after their home. When Mr. Boyles came in, he wanted to name it Long Beach. He wanted to name it for his daughter, but everybody else wouldn't go in along with that, so they named it Long Beach. When Long Beach was started, they had it was in an area where the old Spanish trace was, the land from Mobile to New Orleans. There was a railroad, New Orleans and Mobile, Texas Railroad, and it was there, but it had only freight trains on it, no passenger trains. In 1880, Louisville and Nashville bought the railroad and added passenger cars to the service. And after it came in with all the people would come from all over the world, but mainly from Ohio, Kentucky, Texas, Louisiana, and North Mississippi. Once some came down here, they would fall in love with it, go back and move the whole families, which were just amazing. In early 1900s, Long Beach started shipping up north, and with the railroad having easy way to ship radishes and all. They start raising radishes, and it became the radish capital of the world. They also shipped other vegetables, carrots, turnips, cabbage and stuff. They built a packing shed in 1908, and it's right there on the railroad track, and they have shipped up to 330 train loads a day up north. With the, it also stopped raising chickens, and of course all the vegetables and the lumber, we just had everything shipping out of here until the Great Depression in 1929. When the Depression came, it just stopped everything, and the economy just went downhill. It was a very, very sad time in Long Beach. But they had to also start trying to raise flowers. They had the Lilydale Nursery. John Allen and his wife had that and raised all kinds of plants that they could ship. And then the Carubas had the Gladiola farm, and they really made a name of themselves. And when the high school was built, they had to take over part of the Gladiola farm to build it. So we were very proud of it. A hurricane of 1893 sure changed things on the coast. The harbor at Cat Island was used mostly for shipping lumber, but it was damaged so bad it could no longer be used. Long Beach had been the city to watch, but due to the storm devastation, Gulfport became well known, and they took over the harbor, moved it from Cat Island to Gulfport. My family moved to Long Beach in 1915. My father, Myrtle Dubuisson, mother Minnie B, and my brother Clyde moved here. My father was working for some relatives who had a mercantile store and working such long, long hours and he was used to being outdoors all the time, farming and building and all, and his health went down. So he was advised to move to a different climate. And my grandma and grandpa Briggs, my mother's parents, lived on East Old Pass Road here, which was just a wagon trail at that time. But they knew a piece of property of 10 acres right down the street from their home, and they taught Mom and Daddy to move into that place. So Mom and Daddy moved here, and the house was on, like I say, the old dirt road, went through the woods. It had a house, an old house, a barn, an outhouse, and a well and pump. No good old things like light and running water and so forth. When Ray and I were born several years later, they realized that they needed a bigger place. So they took the old house, they tore down the west side of it. We had moved the furniture to the east side, and they rebuilt the west side. Then they moved the materials from the east side to the west side, and they built the east side. Had a living room, dining room, kitchen on the east side, 3 bedrooms on the left side, and a bathroom before bathtubs were available, which was amazing. My daddy did that. Anyway, my mother said we slept under the stars several nights before the roof was put on. But when the roof was put on, we really loved it. My daddy went to my Uncle John Dito's on the corner and had a sawmill, and he picked out every piece of yellow pine that went into this house. My grandfather, mother's father, Mr. Briggs, and Daddy put this house up, double walls. And it was up off the ground, so my great uncle Albert Dubuisson from the Kill put the pillars under the house, brick pillars, and built a beautiful fireplace with cream-colored bricks and maroon mortar. We were so proud of that. They did not put double floors for several years, but when they needed double floors, they did add those. And Daddy cut down 9 pine trees from his pastures, had the lumber treated, and 2 of his carpenter brothers, Uncle Tom and Uncle Carlos, put the floors down. His brother Sylvester put the polyurethane on it, and we really love our house now. I mentioned that Mother and Daddy had moved here, and that our home was built 91 years ago. Everything has changed after they moved in. He moved on 10 acres. Well, the 10 acres on the west side of the house became available, so he bought that. Then Uncle Henry Dubuisson lived on the east side, who had a dairy, and when milk had to be pasteurized, he couldn't afford the equipment, so he had to sell off his cattle. So when he needed money, he would sell Daddy 10 acres for $500, then another 10 acres. So we ended up with 41 acres, which really turned out pretty good. It was all pasture land, and my younger brother taught Daddy into raising Angus cattle too. So beside a pecan orchard of 64 trees, and we really had a lot of stuff around here. Daddy picked between 2,000 and 5,000 pounds of pecans a year, and it really helped. When the post office became available in 1922, after Mr. Bailey's daughters got tired of running the post office and he was named postmaster, you didn't have to have a civil service examination at the time, but you did have to pass an exam. Uncle John Dito was a politician, and when the police came available, he talked to Mom and Daddy, who had met at Roan's Business College, and he had a background of bookkeeping, and he talked to them about becoming a postmaster. My younger brother was 2, I was 4, and my older brother Clyde was 7. And Mama was busy raising us, but Daddy wasn't making enough on the farm to be able to buy the farm and to keep going. And it only paid $900 a year at that time. So anyway, they decided that Mother would become postmaster and he'd continue with the farm. She had to walk back and forth at that time, or either ride a horse or a buggy. And there wasn't any sidewalks or any streets out this way, so she had to depend on Daddy going to meet us. So we had to have someone here at home to take care of us. And she went to work every day down there, 7 days a week. She had to go on Sunday too. She'd have to get down there open up at 8 and close at 6. She'd come home in the middle of the day sometimes. Anyway, walking, there was no law against having cows out in the open. One night she was walking home, it was getting kind of dark, and she couldn't see a cow in the middle of the road, and she fell over it. Really scared her to death. But anyway, it was really something. When she was appointed by President Warren Harding in 1922, and anyway, after that time, every year, 4 years, when Polly, was supposed to be someone coming in, she would have to get a petition signed by everyone to get back in, and she had to be re-elected, so-called. She had all of these certificates of her appointments that I had never seen until Mary Ellen Alexander came out here when she was writing her book, and Mama pulled them out. So she had certificates signed by Warren Harding, Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, and Franklin Roosevelt. She had 2 of them signed by him. And then she had to take a civil service exam. That had to come in, and she didn't have to have all of those certificates of petitions every year after that. It went under civil service in 1939. She was elected postmaster in 1922 and served 34 years to 1956. And she was the first female postmaster in the USA, or in Mississippi anyway. So anyway, we were really proud of her being in there. She went in the post office. The first one was a room off of the Castanier's drugstore. I do not know that they had all of but these buildings in Long Beach until she went into the post office. There was no one in the government. There was no government office in Long Beach when she became postmaster. So she had to take the place of a government employee, and any answers that were needed, she had to be able to find them. And so it really made a difference. She was the first person to cut her hair. Everybody, all women always wore long hair, and she was the first person to do that. She was there all the years that I was in school and all, and it made a big difference. They moved the post office from Castanier's drugstore to a building that Mr. Fillingham owned. Had a butcher shop on one side, and she had post office in the other. The Hancock County Bank was built a good little while before that, and they were allowed 2 branches. They had one in Pascagoula and one in Long Beach. And when the Depression hit, all the banks except Hancock Bank were closed. Gulfport had no banks. So when they needed a bank in Gulfport, they said that they could move the one to Long Beach. Mama was in the building, Mr. Fillingham's building was next to the bank, and they had a vault, so Mama was having to bring her money orders and her money in, everything back and forth every day. And so the bank allowed her to use their vault. Every afternoon she was able to take her stuff over to put it in, pick it up in the morning. And that really made a big difference. And so when they moved the bank, they had a building in Gulfport they moved it to. And so they offered to rent the building to the postmaster. So Mama moved into the bank, and she was there until they built a special post office. We came up going over there. She had to go 5 days a week, and we really knew that what to expect from her. On Sunday morning she had to go. My daddy was a Catholic and my mother was Methodist. And the Catholic Church had nothing for young people at that time. And the Methodist Church had Sunday school. So she took us every Sunday morning to Sunday school while she went to the post office to put up mail. I joined the church when I was 10 years old. My brothers joined later, but we joined the Methodist Church at that time. My father was still going to the Catholic Church, but he'd go with us sometimes, but we really got involved with our church. And now I am the oldest member in that church. I'm not the oldest person, but I'm the oldest member. And I'm proud of it. The Methodist Church was organized in 1874. It's the oldest church in Long Beach. When the L&N Railroad bought out the old other railroad, Mrs. Fanny Donovan, her husband Donovan, moved to Long Beach, and they built a house across the street on Pine Street from the church. He was the section foreman, and they just got involved. At that time, the Methodist Church, where we had these beautiful oak trees. The land was donated by Mr. Ware, and Miss Donovan wanted to start a Sunday school, so she would have a classes out under those trees where it was nice and cool, and people started coming. They were interested. And when the weather got bad or would start raining, Mr. Donovan had an extra freight car on the railroad that hauled goats, but he fixed it up so they could use it for Sunday school. Then they realized that more people were getting interested, so they built a 16 by 24 foot building on the property and kept it for a while. When they realized they could build a bigger church, they moved that building to Pine Street, the very last house on the left-hand side of the street. It's involved in the house. They used it part of the house. They built in a green, dark green building, and that's where I joined the church. The third building was the present Heritage Hall. Then they built Moore Hall in honor of H.J. Moore, one of the ministers. The next church was built and consecrated in 1987. Second parsonage is on Briarwood Drive. First parsonage is on the corner of Church and Pine Streets across from there. The last building, Christian Life Center, was completed 2 weeks before Hurricane Katrina and was left undamaged. We feel so honored that our church was the only church south of the railroad that was left standing between Biloxi and Bay St. Louis. We're so proud that we had several members to become ordained pastors. Bernard McGee, David Price, David Huffman, Kenny Hill, and Rod Dixon Fisher. We are very proud of our church and our members. We are all very dedicated, and we really help make our city what it is. I want to go back now and mention about my going to school. I started to school in Long Beach, on the area where Harper McCon was. It was just a small building when I started. There were all 12 groups went to the same school. And at that time, I had mentioned about our house having an outhouse. Well, when I started school, they had outhouses at the school too. I wasn't surprised at that. But when they did add water to our city in 1920, put in water thing, they did build some new outhouses at the school with water. And when I was in the 3rd grade, my teacher, Miss Pride, took the girls in my class out to this new outhouse to show us a commode and toilet paper. And she had to teach us how to flush a Johnny and how to fold toilet paper to use it. We were so used to having Montgomery Ward or Sears Roebuck catalogs in our outhouses that we used as toilet paper all of our lives up until that time. It was amazing. Then it was so great to have electricity and running water, all the benefits in not only our homes but in our schools. And it was amazing. We had different subjects even. We were taught we had physical education, we had manners, we were taught just how to make out in life, how we to live, and it was quite different now. The subjects are quite different. The teachers are quite different. At that time, I finished high school in 1936 with 26 members in the class. That 26 now is quite different from the 300 or 400 graduating each year. Of that 26, Alice Mae Skelly, Billy's aunt, and I think are the only 2 left, and that's quite something. When I finished high school, I went to Perk for 2 years and then to Southern and became a home economics teacher. I taught up in Social, Mississippi 1 year, 1940 and 41, and in Woolmarket School in 1942, 43. And I had to, the World War II came along, Mama needed help in the post office, so I had to stop teaching to help her in the post office. I was a very close friend of Mary Ellen Alexander. She was in my brother Ray's class. We were in the band and the glee club and everything involved in school together. And I was so thrilled when she wrote her book, Rosalie and Radishes, about the history of Long Beach. She was a remarkable woman, and the Quarles family were so involved with the activities of the city. And her aunt, Mrs. Toomer, kept newspaper clippings all the time and wrote down everything that happened. And she had all of that to give to Mary Ellen. And then Mary Ellen was able to go to each church, to eat everything that's really important in the city. And I'm going to put this for anybody to look at it. You can buy them at the Long Beach Library for $25. She's had 3 editions. This is the 3rd edition, and it is as near up to date as it could be. I was so proud of Mary Ellen for publishing this. This is my mama's picture on page 95, and it tells the history of her tenure in the post office, at the Hancock Bank, helping her out, and about all the people that stayed with her, about her appointments by the different presidents, about where the post office was and where it is now. So we are still proud of it. When she was postmaster in 1947, they added city delivery. And Eddie Crewthers and Edward Haddam were the mail carriers for Long Beach. Eddie on East Long Beach and Edward on the West. They walked it twice a day at first, then they start riding bikes. Jesse Sanders was substitute. They changed the rural route from Gulfport to Long Beach, and Beck Billingem was the rural carrier. I was raised in a city where no one had too much money, but we all had our farms and we had everything we raised on at home, and we helped. When someone needed help, we helped each other. We had a group of wonderful colored people to move in. They were just like the rest of us. They helped us and we helped them. And we were very fortunate. I knew that we had people in our cities when we always had good mayors. Mr. Hudgens was one of our local law enforcement people. He was so good. We didn't have problems with our young people because he was so interested. The colored people had Oliver Williams that had a store, and when anybody in the colored section acted up, he would call Mr. Hudgens. Mr. Hudgens would go and talk to them and the parents. And the same thing in the white neighborhood, that we never had problems with our young people. And we were just proud that we grew up like we did, and that our little town is what it is today. Mr. Billy Skelly's grandmother was my Sunday school teacher, and we were all raised so good to be such good Christians, and we have, I think, made a difference in the world. I hope so. I've had a very interesting life, I think, in Long Beach. Graduated from Long Beach High School, being an active member of the Methodist Church. And now I'm enjoying going out to the Senior Citizen Center to be with other people my age and really enjoying life. I feel like I have been a very fortunate person. I have good health. I do have to use a walker because I fell and had to have my hip replaced. But I've just enjoyed life. I'm still involved with church, with senior citizens, with our neighbors and friends and relatives, and just feel that I'm a very blessed person and a very happy person.